Welcome to Riding the Trauma Train, or welcome back if we've shared this space before. I'm Lydia, your host and fellow passenger in this journey of self-healing, inner strength and personal growth. This podcast is a safe, judgment-free space dedicated to the realities of living with and healing from trauma. Through personal stories and in-depth conversations with special guests, including therapists, healers, practitioners, and fellow survivors, we look at what healing can truly look like in everyday life. We explore realistic healing journeys and share simple, sustainable practices and actionable tools to support your well-being along the way. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember, you are not on this journey alone. Today on Riding the Trauma Train, we have Sharon Mustard, and Sharon Mustard from Mustard Therapy and Coaching. Sharon has got 25 years experience in the coaching and therapy world and is going to explain to us lots of different modalities. And I would like to know where this started. So grab your ticket, take your seat, and remember you are not alone on this journey. Sharon, welcome to this episode. And thank you for being a whole mile away and still recording on this on screen.
I know. It's fantastic, isn't it, to actually be local? Yeah.
I know, it's freaky. So, obviously, Riding the Trauma Train is all about trauma. And one of the things that I'm going to say, which is a little bit left field, is there was a lady, we both go to Ladies in Business,
Mhm.
and there was a lady that was talking, and we all get up and say what our businesses are. And she got up and said, I aspire to be Sharon Mustard.
Oh,
Now, that is a big statement. And I think that's because of your approach and how things have expanded it. Like you've got 25 years.
Mhm.
So tell me about Sharon Mustard 25 years ago walking into therapy.
Yay. Good stuff. Well, maybe I need to start a little bit before 25 years.
Yes,
Anyway, we're now
please do.
28 years, so I need to update them.
Yes,
I've
you do.
28 years in business, so giving away my age here. So I grew up in Northern Ireland, to take you a little bit further back than that. And my mum had 9 brothers and sisters. Sorry, she was one of 9, so she had 8 brothers and sisters. My dad was one of 11, and so relationships absolutely fascinated me.
Mm.
And there were conflicts. You don't get that amount of children. I've got 51 cousins, first cousins.
Wowzers.
Yep, yeah. When you go further down the generation, I've lost count. I've honestly lost
Yeah.
count.
That's when the Christmas cards don't even come out.
So definitely my interest in all things relationships came from there. No doubt about it. They didn't provide psychology or anything related to that at my school, but I mean, that wasn't unusual for that
Mm.
time. And so it wasn't until I went to university. I was actually heading for a career in mathematics and physics.
Okay.
We talk to our clients about thinking of what we call the Venn diagram and the 3 pillars of what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what gives you a sense of purpose. And I was good at maths and physics, and that was the only circle in the Venn diagram that would have gone into. And hear me talking about Venn diagrams, so it's come in somewhere. So really, I was fascinated about relationships. Bizarrely, I was also fascinated about birth and about parenthood. Yes, from a human perspective, but my dad was a pig farmer. And so I got to witness births from I was a toddler.
Yeah.
Animal births, to be
Yeah,
fair,
but
of humankind.
unusual thing to be able to have access to it at that age.
Absolutely.
Or even
Absolutely.
as an adult, to be fair.
I was fascinated. I was absolutely fascinated. Hence why part of what we do is a specialist pregnancy, hypnobirthing, and postnatal mental health service. But that is only a small part of what we do. That's just our specialist. Yeah. So
Wow.
I went through. I was one of the unusual psychotherapists in that I started my career, hence why I've racked up so many hours and so many years. I actually went into psychology because I fancied a boy who was doing the course.
Oh my gosh, that is
Yeah,
amazing.
perfect. And do you know what was really, really awful? He didn't end up going. So go figure.
Wow. Well, it was obviously meant to be. There's no way you go down this path and then stay on it for this long. So that's amazing. Serendipitous, as they would say.
Exactly that, exactly that. But I mean, absolutely, my knowledge, my passion, my interest for it has grown. I've taught and been lucky to teach throughout the world. I absolutely, trauma in particular is my subject, and absolutely love to learn more. Never stop learning.
I love that. That's so thinking about that, then you went into psychology for college. Where did the aspect of going from college to being, do you know what? Because you could have gone and worked in lots of different
And
places, but you've got Sharon Mustard therapy and coaching, which means you have developed a business. 28 years. That's no mean feat, especially 28 years ago, setting up a therapy business. It's not as big as it is now. It's not as sought after, I would say. You didn't really talk about things back then. So, how
absolutely.
did mustard therapy and coaching start?
Come from that. Yeah, absolutely. So beyond university, I worked in mental health. So I worked first of all with people in a mental health housing project, and then I moved into the resettlement of a large psychiatric hospital in Essex. And boy, were my eyes opened in there in lots and lots of ways. But I think it just taught me actually therapy is my way to go. I worked with a lot of people there, a lot of mental health professionals, including psychiatrists and psychotherapists, etc. And I just thought psychotherapy is my way to go. So I set up my business. My husband joined me in later years, but he's been in for the long haul as well. But I set up my business, and I think I was partly in the right place at the right time that actually more people were accessing private therapy. But mustard therapy and coaching is an acknowledgement that I strongly, strongly believe that therapy needs to be an integrative process. It's so easy to say, I'm a psychotherapist and this is how I work, or I'm a hypnotherapist because we do hypnotherapy as well, and this is how I work. But the person sitting in front of you, you have no idea when they come in, even if you know some of their history or what they've told you, you have no idea what they're going to respond to, what capabilities they're going to have in terms of can they go there with their trauma? Do they need
Mhm,
to go there with their trauma? So we need to have a lot of different tools. And the coaching bit, about life coaching, because if we're looking at the present and we're looking at the history of how they came to, for example, the behaviors, the reactions within relationships, the internal thinking, whatever it might be. Once we understand that and have looked at the whys that's there and why they've come to that point, there's no point in going, okay, great, that's lovely, that's healed. They've got a future there.
mhm.
And in some ways, there's kind of like a new them, or certainly an adapted them, and hopefully a more healthy them moving forward. So that's where the coaching element comes in. I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, because it was when did that come in? 'Cause I've been in the area for like 20 years, and it was mustard therapy. So coaching is the actual title, I suppose, has come into that. So when did that develop?
Actually, a while ago, that's a good question. So I've also been in the area for over 20 years. So our practice started in Surrey originally, but mustard therapy and coaching has been there at least 10 years. Um,
Really?
coaching element. Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
realized
amazing.
there's still something missing with all of the integrative ways that I can work as a therapist. I realized that there was something missing, and the coaching element definitely was there. And we get a lot of referrals, funny enough, that come saying, I want life coaching. You're a life coach. And actually, what they need is a form of therapy, but
Yeah.
maybe don't recognize that, or maybe there's still a stigma attached or
Yeah, they
whatever.
don't want to recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
So
is amazing. That honestly, I just because this is the reason I've started riding the trauma train. That when I was going through my trigger a couple of years ago, my abuser died, and it sent me into this spiral of like tears. I keep calling it tears because I didn't have a mental health breakdown. I was just kind of in this spirally lost place. And I don't know why I didn't just give you a call. Like, oh my gosh, looking back now, that's ridiculous. But I didn't. And I thought I could do it all on my own. So I thought I could listen my way through everything, but I couldn't find anything. And I
Mhm,
thought to myself, if I can't find anything, then no one else can find anything.
mhm,
So
mhm.
now mustard therapy and coaching is on my radar. I literally don't know why it didn't click until I seen you at Ladies in Business, which is just ridiculous. But
I
anyway,
know.
but that's by the by. I need to ask you a left field question again. And this isn't about you. This isn't about, it's about what is the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist?
Right. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So a psychiatrist is all about assessment, mental health assessment and diagnosis, and also about medication. It's fair to say that psychiatry has changed significantly, really, over about the last 15 years, in that there are more psychiatrists that are actually training in some type of therapy modality. Often things like EMDR, hypnotherapy as well is quite a common one. But traditionally, psychiatry is a
I'm
medical
going to have to
doctor
mark
that,
this because I can't actually hear you. It's gone. I don't know if you can hear me
oh,
still. You've paused.
okay, can. I can. Can you hear me now?
No, you are literally muted. So if you can't hear me, bear with. I'm sure you'll come back shortly.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but you're frozen. It might come back. Give it a couple of minutes.
Mm.
I don't know why it does this.
Okay.
It's Salisbury. It's the
Yeah.
area, isn't it? Okay, you're coming back into play. You are coming
Yeah.
back into play.
Okay.
Hold on.
You don't want me to leave and come back in or anything?
No, so I don't know if I'll be able to marry them up. But if you start again from where I asked you the question about psychiatry, starting what it is, and then I can clip that whole section out, which is clever, but I can't.
Brilliant. Okay, just let me know again if it gets
Go
a bit
for it.
difficult. Yes, so psychiatry, if we start with psychiatry, a psychiatrist really is a medical doctor who will assess and diagnose in working with mental health. However, they can also medicate, being a medical doctor that works in mental health. One thing I was saying, though, is over the last 15 years, more and more psychiatrists, both in the UK and across the world, have realized that there's something missing in what they do. So a lot of psychiatrists have actually retrained in some therapy modality. So they're not marketing themselves as a therapist, but they recognize that they need to do an aspect of therapy. Um, Medication and our knowledge of medication has changed over the years. Maybe we'll get into
Hmm.
that a bit later, but yeah, it's kind of doesn't do what they thought it did.
Yeah.
Um, it's fair to say. So with a psychotherapist, we work with the mind. So psychotherapy means treatment of the mind, and that can be with hypnotherapy, that could be with um, form of psychodynamic counseling, it can be with psychotherapy that's working with parts, what we call internal family systems. So really working with all of the different bits of you, the one that thinks this, the one that does this, the one that
Hmm.
loses when there's some form of injustice. So all of that as well can be part of psychotherapy. However, a psychotherapist doesn't necessarily do all of those things.
Okay. See, now I never knew the difference between. That's why I was like, oh, do you know what? You've actually mentioned both of them, so I'm going to ask what they are, which is a really good explanation. I think with regards to what people generally kind of look for, as in Joe blogs, Jane blogs, is the psychotherapist side of things.
Yeah, yeah.
So with regards to that, what you've mentioned a few things and like the internal family thing. What modalities do you have within mustard therapy and coaching?
Sure. Okay. So, in terms of training, and this is the same with both of our therapists, otherwise it would be ridiculous. People being referred and saying, "Well, we think you might need that person, but we're not sure." So we're trained the same. So we do psychodynamic psychotherapy and integrative psychotherapy. So working through all of that. Hypnotherapy. We're
Hmm.
also trained counselors. We work with internal family systems, and also we're trauma informed. This might blow your mind, but some of your listeners may have heard of it. You might have heard of it. We're trauma informed with what we call the polyvagal system, the polyvagal theory, because we understand that's really about. I'm seeing you smile there,
Mhm.
so maybe you do. But the interaction between brain, different parts of the brain, and the nervous system in the body, because we know now trauma is not just psychological. It is very much physical as well. And if we're not working with that whole system, then we're not working effectively.
With over the years then, with your experience,
Mhm.
how do you think that therapy has changed from when you started 28 years ago to Mental Health Awareness Week as we are in 2026? How has therapy kind of developed over those years? What have you seen personally?
Sh- Sure. So I think part of it, there's the acknowledgement of working with the whole system, but there are also myths about therapy, and trauma in particular, that have changed quite significantly. So we used to think trauma was about what happened to us, whether it was a singular incident or whether it was, the style, shall we say, of our childhood or attachment styles, etc. We know now it's so much more than that. It is anything that overwhelms our internal resources at the time and creates significant psychological distress. So if you think as we're younger, or the younger we are, the less internal resources we have. However, you could have an adult who is facing something in their lives, whether it be a relationship breakdown, whether it be a transition, such as becoming a parent, for example, or children leaving home, or, even a change in career. There could be something, and, without knowing what was going on for you, it sounds like there was something that triggered and you were like, what is this all about? So
Mhm.
I think we understand now that our disproportional reactions in the here and now, whether they be psychological, whether they behavioral, with someone with a compulsive behavior
Mhm.
or overthinking, whatever it might be, we might know it's disproportional in the now, but it's all related to where we were before. We no longer think that trauma all starts in childhood. I think that's a big change and a very welcome one. However, the internal resources that we learned or didn't get the chance to learn in childhood is really, really key, even if a trauma happened when you were 18, when you were 28, 38, whatever. Yeah. So I think we
Interesting.
yeah, that's all right.
Interesting that you said as you what you went through as a child, or what you didn't, like what you weren't able to experience, or what you weren't able to experience, because that is really a very big misconception, isn't it, in the trauma world, is that you automatically think that it's always something that happened. Like if you
Hmm.
think of children that have been neglected or have had parents that are emotionally unavailable is a
Hmm.
trauma. One lady I had on, in fact, it was the episode that launched this week, which was episode 22. She had a hypnotherapy for regression. Now,
Yep.
hers was to do with weight loss, but she was like, she said, I was expecting to talk all these different languages, to go back into like Victorian times. She was 4. She was literally 4 years old. And she said, I'd never experienced trauma, but she had. It was the 80s. She had to go to hospital. She was in hospital for 4 weeks, and her parents weren't allowed to stay. So she was abandoned every night for 4 months,
Yeah.
for 4 weeks, sorry. And that was her trauma. So I
Yeah.
think understanding, especially when you're an adult looking back on childhood stuff, you really need to kind of unpick everything, because I grew up in a household which was quite a violent household that I didn't know was a violent household back then. It was
Mhm.
just part and parcel of where I lived. So it's really interesting to hear you say that, because I think a lot of people need to know that sometimes it isn't the doing, it's the undoing or the not doing that actually has an impact.
Absolutely. You're quite right. Actually, that you may have heard of the concept before, but we sometimes talk, to pick up on what you're saying there. about capital T trauma. So that's kind of something that happened that shouldn't have happened. So the obvious example, but certainly not the only, would be some form of abuse or witnessing abuse, where we also talk about the small T trauma. And that's the stuff that should have happened that didn't happen. So that could be, you were talking about the extreme kind of spectrum there of neglect and quite
Mhm.
serious neglect in the example you'd used before. Or it could be, I don't want to say you as a child, because that would be unfair to kind of go there and to make preconceptions. But sometimes it can be feeling, because of what's going on in the household around you and the world around you, that you're feeling that you're not being seen or heard for your needs. That in itself can be massive trauma for a child,
Yeah.
because we cannot, as young children, get the keys to our first flat and go off and be independent and have a job and whatever.
Yeah.
We can't do that. Our brain's not nearly developed enough to be able to look after ourselves. So actually, when people just aren't hearing us or seeing us or telling us that we need to be good, or we just need to keep quiet, or, they're involved in something else. I'm talking about on an ongoing basis with the
Yeah.
small drama. It's usually an over time.
Hmm.
Then what happens is we're learning that actually, we could die, because people aren't attending to us. Now that sounds very dramatic, but we're talking
But
about,
but
you
it's
know,
we're talking about a survival mode. That's
yeah,
exactly it.
yeah, yeah,
That is.
exactly. So we need people.
Sorry, carry
Yeah,
on.
that's all right. No, I was just going to say, again, another little useful acronym is that we need three S's when we're young: safe, seen, and soothed. And that is about, you help me regulate my own stuff. That's the
Yeah.
soothe, whether I'm upset, whether I'm hungry, whether I'm tired, whatever. Safe, hopefully, is an obvious one. And that seen, it's about,
Mhm.
do you see me? Do you notice me? Do you notice my feelings? Do you notice when things affect me? Yeah.
It's you saying that, literally two things come to mind. One is the old saying, "Children should be seen and not heard." That one. And then the
Yeah.
other one is, "Oh, she just wants attention." Like,
Yeah.
if somebody just wants attention, then be present with them. Sit
Yeah.
down and, like,
Yeah.
it's not hard. 5 minutes of undivided attention or presentness, that's not my may not be a word, but it is now.
It is now.
It's gonna yeah, it's gonna help so, so much. You said I just need to clarify, when I say I was brought up in a violent household, it wasn't physical, but there were things around like knives, guns,
Yeah.
bows and arrow, like things I would never have around my own children,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
was just something we that my dad had around.
Mhm.
But it's definitely like some people go through things that are physical, emotional, neglectful. And this is where I think 2026, it's so amazing that we're going down the route of actually, do you know what? We don't need to not listen to this. We don't need to not heal what's going on. Like, in order for us to have a fulfilling life, we need to be able to unravel that, unpick that, and have a beautiful, beautiful well, we need to be safe, don't we? And that's the whole thing. Trauma.
Okay. I've kind of mentioned a couple that I think are the biggies. So the fact that it is physical, nervous, psychological, it's about everything,
Mhm.
not just about the brain. We know now, for example, and going to mention meds again, um, all of our antidepressants, for example, are based on SSRIs. So they're about serotonin. And about targeting serotonin pathways in the brain. We now know that 90% of serotonin is actually produced in the gut. 90%, 90.
Wow.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. So I think a big misconception about trauma is ignoring that, because
Mhm.
when we have experienced some kind of trauma at any point in our lives and it's overwhelmed our internal resources, we perceive that we can't cope. We then carry forward with kind of almost like adaptive strategies, survival strategies, coping skills, all of that, that might be either not needed anymore, but maybe they helped us. If, for example, the trauma was as a child, keeping
Hmm.
quiet, never voicing our needs might have been useful, but
Yeah.
maybe it's not now. So I think a big misconception is ignoring all of that. It's not just about the past and the present in terms of what your brain has learned. If I can, to kind of go along with that misconception, talk about something we call the hand model of the brain. It's a Dan Siegel, if you've ever heard of him, if anybody's ever
I
heard of
have.
his. Yeah,
Did
wonderful,
you say
wonderful
his
man.
hand, as in hand?
As in hand, yes. So
Okay.
basically, the hand model of the brain is about thinking of the higher cortical regions of your brain being the top of your knuckles. These
Hmm.
subcortical regions, you'll notice I've deliberately tucked my thumb in
Yeah.
because this is representing the emotional brain. But when in the subcortical regions, when the emotional brain flips the lid, what happens is we've got a situation where this part of our brain is offline. And guess
Mhm.
who's talking to all of the hypothalamus, which controls all of our hormones, all of the peptides in our body, all of the messages come from here. And if this part of our brain, emotional part of our brain, has flipped the lid, then it's talking to the hypothalamus. It's also talking to the body and the nervous system, including the gut. So everything, both feedback and I want to say feed down, that's not a word, but let's make it one.
There's a new one.
Let's
See
make
if we
them
can
up,
get to
right?
10.
So the messages back and forth, if you like, are being controlled by the emotional brain. So if you're having a panic attack in the middle of a supermarket, then you might know this is a disproportional reaction and you
Hmm.
are safe at that time. But your emotional brain, for whatever reason, has learned that you're not. And so it's controlling everything. And so you might do fight flight, you might do freeze, you might even do something we call fawning, which is about people pleasing, trying to kind of, do everything to be useful or to be good or to be good enough or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's the biggest misconception.
That is brilliant. And also the fact that you said flip the lid, like how many times have you heard that as an expression? Oh my gosh, they flipped their lid. And it's because that is where the overwhelming emotions literally burst like an explosion. So
Yeah.
that is amazing. Um,
Yeah.
okay. So following on from that misconception, do you think, or sorry, not do you think, are there any common ways that unresolved trauma can show up in everyday life for people?
Okay. So I think some of the common ways are looking at how people are in relationships. And I don't just mean with a partner or a life partner, but how they may be with children if they're a parent, how they may be within friendships or in social circles, and how they may be within work. Because there are, I mentioned the word conflicts, but there are what we call ruptures everywhere. Somebody doesn't agree with us. That's a rupture. We, are worried about having made a mistake and said something, in a conversation, and we're ruminating over and over it.
Over
But that
overanalyzing it.
Exactly, but that might have been a rupture because we might be kind of paranoid about that people aren't really thinking that way, but we think they are. But it might be a rupture in that we have made a mistake or we've just, made a faux pas. And so it's looking at people's reactions to ruptures and within relationships are really key, which is why coming from such a large family is really quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen every example possible and still do. I'm still learning. I'm still
Yeah.
learning. Um, so I think definitely within relationships, but also commonly it's looking at how we react to situations of stress or of overwhelm, because there are all times, whether it's busy, whether it's that we're made redundant or whatever it might be, we're moving
Hmm.
house. There are many, many, many times of stress, and it's looking at how we're dealing with that. That also is a common way that the trauma can turn up. And I'm not saying that we diagnose everyone with that's had a trauma in their life, but actually we've all had even minor traumas. And okay, they may not be affecting us down the line, but we've all had them. Um,
Yeah.
and I really don't mind sharing this. I often share it with clients. I would have been 5, I would have been just in school, the time when they used to jab you at every
Yeah.
opportunity in primary school. They don't quite do it quite so much. You've got to be careful of your listeners who might have needle
Hmm.
phobia, is what I say here. But there was something we were being jabbed for at the age of 5. And to entice us to have this done, we were going to be given dolly mixtures because that was the
Oh my
sweet
gosh.
10 dolly mixtures. I mean, it's just heaven, every child's heaven, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Especially at
my
school.
10 dolly mixtures were sitting on the table. I can even see them sitting on the table. I was about to be jabbed for whatever immunization it was. And the person that had gone before me, a girl called Diane, I'm going to name and shame here, she stole my dolly mixtures. She ate them. Okay. Now, what was really interesting and why I'm saying about that is that obviously I was upset. I'd done what they'd asked me to do. I'd
Yeah.
sat still, and now I had no reward at the end of it. But what was quite traumatizing for me, and I didn't have the internal resources to cope with, was the fact that the adults didn't stick up for me. There was oh, well, they're gone now. There's no dolly mixtures. Nobody tried to
Same.
replace them, told Diane off, tried to soothe me in any way, I was upset. Yeah. So I know I'm talking about, a minor trauma here, but that's enough to be a trauma for a child. And if that's in the
Absolutely.
context, other things where a child, given my example, learns not to trust adults, then that becomes a major thing.
Yeah, and I think like that's a really good example um I know you said it is so minor, but it's not. When you're a 5-year-old, those dolly mixtures
It's
are
not.
that is
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And also if you think of it in terms of when a child tells an adult something and
Mhm.
they don't get that safety, that acknowledgement, they've not been heard, that
Yeah.
is the same thing. And it could be dolly mixtures, it could be something that was some kind of abuse, but it is the same
Mhm.
reaction and your nervous system feels the same way to that reaction. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I totally get it. I really appreciate you sharing that because it puts it into context for everybody listening that actually it that's the same thing. 5 5-year-old Sharon did
Yeah. Mhm.
something and something happened and then no one acknowledged it.
No one
Then
acknowledged
yeah,
that. Exactly
and
that.
and I that is absolutely just yeah, that
Yeah.
puts literally the nail on the head, the icing on the cake, whatever the term is. With regards to what you said about relationships, I find that really interesting because there seems to be a not a new term, so not obviously narcissistic relationships we are very aware of, but they're more geared towards like, oh my gosh, like partner relationships. There's a
Mhm.
term now, like I keep seeing everywhere, which is, do you have a narcissistic parent? Now, I can get what a narcissistic relationship is, but can you talk us through that? Because you've just mentioned about the fact that you see it in relationships. So, how would something like that show up for you as a psychotherapist if someone came to see you?
Sure. Particularly with regards to a narcissistic parent or a
Yeah,
narcissistic relationship.
because
Yeah.
that's a new term that I keep seeing pop up everywhere. So that's
Mhm.
just my like intrigued brain.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things I supposed to remember, first of all, with narcissism, full stop, is
Yeah,
there is spectrum. We can all have narcissistic traits, if you like. So I just didn't want any of your listeners with what I'm about to say to kind of
yeah,
go and go, my parent was that. I remember this, in the same way as, I haven't had ongoing trauma from
yeah.
that situation, but you know. So when a parent is narcissistic, going back to one of those S's, that being seen. If someone is not seeing you at all, and it's about their needs. So let's assume you're a child who's toilet training and you've just had an accident, which happens to every
Happens a
child.
100 times a
Toilet
day. Yeah.
training and learning to feed and learning
Yeah.
to walk, they fall over, it's going to happen. Somebody's is consistently shaming them by, "You made me angry. Look what you've done. You've created a big problem." So it's about their needs, and so the child is taking on all of that blame. But also, as a parent who totally prioritizes at all times their needs, so that the child really doesn't feel seen for their needs at all. It can also be so things like grandiose narcissism is, it's about me, see me, see what I do. That's a very crude summary, but
Yeah.
grandiose
But no,
narcissism.
it needs to be simplistic. Otherwise, be here for like 3 days.
Yeah, which is fine by me,
Me too.
but maybe not for you or your
No.
listeners. So with vulnerable narcissism, that can be that we feel just somebody, again, talking from a parent perspective, just wasn't capable or competent, in that they are so triggered by what's going on for us on a regular basis. Again, we've all been triggered as parents
Yeah,
sometimes. That's
absolutely.
fine. That's perfectly
Trying to
normal.
get to the school run is one of those triggers.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. My
I'm
children
not
have
going to get
grown
to
up
in
with
this
2
morning.
therapists. Exactly. 2 therapists as parents, and our children, still triggered us. So, it's quite normal,
Absolutely.
quite human. Um, but if you're experiencing that on a regular basis, that actually your parent cannot cope perhaps with your feelings, whether it be your crying or your anger or your tantrums or whatever, um, then can go in extreme spectrum wise to vulnerable narcissism, where it can only be about them because they can't cope with you. Yeah.
Okay. And do
There
you
are
think
many,
that,
many other
sorry,
forms of narcissism.
I
We
bet
really
there
could
are.
be here 3 days. But
So, but do you think the narcissism kind of traits are developed from trauma? Or do you think that, oh, that is a big question. Do you think they're developed from trauma, or do you think that is a personality trait? Like, that's a conflicting question, but can narcissism be a personality trait, or could it only be from trauma?
okay. So personality traits are transient. They are not about a genetic push through. There can be a genetic link, but personality is transient. In other words, it is formed and transformed and kind of rewritten by our lived experience, which is why we know people can fail from trauma, for example. So it more becomes learned behavior from lived experience. So if you've got a narcissistic parent, for example, there's most likely to be transgenerational stuff, not because of genes per se, but because of lived experience, and also epigenetics. Now, that's another very big 3 day
I'm gonna have to
plus.
write that one down.
Epigenetics, it's basically a summary of epigenetics, is that we have our genes and we can't change our genes, but
Mhm.
epigenetics is, depending on lived experience, how our genes are actually expressed or not.
Oh,
Okay.
I love that.
Yes.
I
So
love
even our
that.
genes not can be changed, but whether they're used, if you like, whether they're
Mhm.
functioning out there, can be changed depending on our experience. Don't know if anyone's ever seen, for example, somebody that's had like streaks in their hair that have been due to trauma,
Yeah.
or they've got a child who's got a grey streak. I mean, I'm no longer a child. I'm completely grey now.
You're never gonna see my grey because there's a box. It's a box
There
colour.
you go. Well, this is a bottle too, believe it or not, even though I'm grey. Work that one out. Um, um, it's the right type of grey.
Mhm.
But, that kind of streak, and that would be an epigenetic change, due to a child's trauma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mother-in-law, she has been grey since she was 10. So she lost her dad to cancer when she was or I believe it was cancer. It was a long time ago. It's like 50 years wasn't around. But yeah, so she was grey when she was 10. And I know a couple of colleagues in my day job that have been grey since they were in their 20s. And it's literally that. It's through lived experience. Also, love this epigenetics thing is amazing because if I be a little bit selfish here and relate it to myself,
Mhm.
all the childhood trauma that I went through, I see traits of my parents, but I
Mhm.
flip them because I know that I'm never going to follow up with them and I'm never gonna do what happened. So I can totally get that and that's
Mhm.
made me really happy.
Yeah, you'll be on a complete research trail now.
Oh, you're not wrong. Literally, I've written down epigenetics and I've circled it like that.
Epigenetics, EPI, and then genetics is the rest of the word. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. The other question I want to ask, which is it's going back a little bit to what you're saying. You were talking about antidepressants and SSRI. So for the
Mhm.
listeners that don't actually know what that term means, what does it mean and what does it do? Could you just expand on that a bit, please?
Okay. Please know I'm not a medical doctor. That's important to say as well. So SSRI stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And it works on serotonin receptors, but very often it can, when it's working on the brain, because the brain does still produce 10%, it is basically blocking the receptors that take the serotonin that's produced by the brain, and so it doesn't get those messages because they're blocked by something that's the same shape, if you like, as the
Yeah.
serotonin. And so what happens is the brain is almost blind to the fact that there's serotonin around, and it produces more. Serotonin is very key in our mood and mood regulation. It's very key in our reward system, our ability to enjoy things. It's key in our energy and our sleep. So serotonin has got a big role really across our lives. It's very important.
Okay. So if someone is taking something that's got SSRI in,
Mhm.
my brain's going off because obviously serotonin and dopamine are similar things, aren't they? That is all to do with happy.
Yeah.
So if you've got an inhibitor, is that why people say that when they're on them, they feel quite numb, like it's kind of dampening down feelings, or have I got the opposite of that?
So it's inhibiting the messages being received. And so what happens is the brain produces more. So in actual fact, it's increasing your serotonin production, if you like, by inhibiting the
Yeah,
received
I know
messages.
that's why it kind of
Blow your mind.
in my head it doesn't make sense. Yeah. The other thing is then with that in mind, considering that is like 10%, and
Mhm.
then the rest, the 90% is in your gut. Do you think um not obviously you're not a nutritionalist, but from that gut, is there a way people can produce serotonin and also kind of work their way through their emotions by eating? I know that if I have some amazing chocolate, I feel amazing. Like that split second is great. But then
Mhm.
if I have too much, I feel like it's like I can get the whole gut thing.
Mhm. 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 Yeah. And the thing is, it's looking at, to understand the full picture, why you eat chocolate in the first place,
Mhm.
why you had that chocolate. So, for example, was it actually I like the taste of chocolate and I quite fancy a bit of chocolate? Or was it because something that had happened beforehand? Now, I'm not saying that you need to
Yeah,
answer those questions, but what I mean is sometimes, chocolate and even, kind of compulsive eating, etc., can be a reaction to kind of numbing. You mentioned
yeah,
about numbing there and just numbing everything because we don't want to feel those feelings or we don't
yeah,
want to think those thoughts. And of course, what happens, because if you eat the chocolate and you eat too much chocolate, you usually end up emotionally feeling a lot of shame. You probably feel quite sick.
yeah.
But, you know,
Absolutely, and also the kind of I'm not gonna go into, like, eating disorders, but you do have overeating, binge eating, and all these things that are all about, I suppose, is a reward punishment system, like, when you're happy, "Oh, I'm gonna get myself a bar of chocolate, a glass of wine, if you've got food as a reward or a punishment, and like people say, I'm being good at the moment, or I'm being bad at the moment, but actually it's just food. And if you can control your mood by concentrating on that 90% that is to do with your emotions, my
Mhm,
goodness, that's going to help so many people. And I know it's easier said than done, but
mhm.
actually, if you think that your mood and everything that goes on in can be, even if it's just 50% that you're putting, do you know what I mean? Putting into your gut, it's going to be so much better moving forward.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
is there anything then, if we think about like lifting mood, like you deal with trauma
Mhm,
or people that have gone through trauma on a daily basis. Uh, when you, what, I know you've talked about the different modalities, but is there anything that you say to them to do with the gut? Do you look at the whole person? So you look at their diet, you look at their work, their family life, their history. Is that kind of how your system pans out? Can you talk me through that? Because that was a very long-winded question, but talk
yeah,
me
no,
through
no,
your
that's
process.
fine. I think I sorry if I end up going in not the direction you want to, but really the 4 pillars of positive mental health are diet, sleep, movement. I won't use the word exercise because very often that's got negative connotations for
Hmm.
people, and safe or therapeutic relationships. So that might be, personal or professional, with seeing a therapist. And so we've got to look at all of those areas. But for example, if we started with looking at whether someone has issues with sleeping. Okay, so the 4 pillars of positive mental health, just to answer your question there, are diet, sleep, movement or exercise, and also safe relationships, whether that be personal or professional. So we've really got to be working with someone on all of those. However, if, for example, somebody was having difficulty sleeping, and actually, it might be getting to sleep, or it might even be that they can get to sleep really easily, but they keep waking up during the night, and that's it. They just can't get back. If we started
Hmm.
working with that, the problem is if we've got a dysregulated nervous system, then that part of us that says, no, 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 you need to stay hyper alert at 3 o'clock in the morning is going to continue, is going to kind of block any progress to that. So we never go in just with saying, well, let's work on your diet, let's work on your sleep, let's work on, getting movement and exercise. And actually, exercise is a really scary word for lots of people. So, we're talking here about movement, but we
Yeah.
can't get away with it. We know that it is important for our positive mental health. So we're not,
Yeah.
yes, physical health as well, of course, but we're talking here about the pillars of positive mental health. And we know so much more about that now. So we need to get
Yeah.
people moving as well.
It's also interesting that you said that because I'm training to be a mental health exercise coach. And that because I want to work with trauma as a trauma informed PT, and movement is really important, especially with when as I said 2 years ago, I was triggered by my abuser dying. All I did is walk. I walked in nature. I walked my dog, and it was like connection with nature. It was so good for my mental health. And I know that some people may not be in a position physically where they can do that.
Mhm.
But even like sat down and doing like some bean bicep curls, or doing some walking on the spot, or just some anything, even just putting your head out, and any kind of movement that is gonna move you forward, literally. No, I love that. And the 4 pillars literally sound amazing because
They're
it
simple.
is so
We
important.
can't get away from them. It's interesting you talking about walking in nature. And I mean, we all know, seeing things growing and, is fantastic. But it's a really, one of my favorite facts is about birds and hearing bird song, because we hear
Okay.
bird song. Most of us are like, oh, that's lovely. Can I have more of that?
Mhm.
But there is a scientific explanation as to why birdsong in particular is particularly good for our positive mental health. So this is a takeaway, perhaps, for your audience. We know that if we can hear the birds, there are no predators around. So it gives a direct message to our nervous system, because if there were any threats or predators around, the birds would be off. There would be no birds. Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That is
Because they can fly
incredible. And I
away.
literally have goosebumps everywhere. And do you know what? I can relate to the opposite of that. So when my husband and I were 17, we were married and we moved to Germany.
Uh-huh.
Now we lived 2 kilometers from Bergen-Belsen. People can go and pay their respects. There is no bird song.
Uh-huh.
Literally, from the moment you hit that, it's basically a field, but they've turned it into kind of a museum, but there is no bird song. So the fact that you've said that is, yeah, that is just incredible. And I think every single listener can relate to
Mhm.
the thought. In general, the bird song is beautiful. So, yeah, I absolutely love that. And that is an amazing takeaway. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the listeners about Sharon Mustard therapy and coaching before I ask you that famous conductor's question?
Okay, I'm excited. I think I just want to remind people that you are not where you're from. You know, whatever has happened to you in your life, we know that the brain and the nervous system has got um, massive ability to adapt and to adapt again. So, trauma, another big myth, is never the end of the road. It's never what you stuck with, no matter how many years you might have been doing things or thinking things or being in a particular habitual way. You can always change. You can always heal. You just need the right context and the right way to go forward. So I think that is a big, big must. There is no not changing. You know, everybody is capable of doing what they need.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Love that. That is so good. And I think everybody needs to listen, to hear that. Like, actually rewind this, hear it again. And I appreciate that because that actually means so, oh God, that's actually made me quite emotional because I
Not
believe that
sorry.
too.
Sorry, not
No,
sorry.
it's absolutely fine. Don't be sorry. I always say I'm turning my pain into purpose. And I don't believe that I have been on this healing journey and got to the fact that I'm hosting a podcast because I'm not a strong person. And I want everybody to know that it also means you're not on this journey alone, and you're not. But it's having people like you to reach out to because you can't do it on your own. And if you feel like you've been, oh yeah, I can just move forward, I can go on this journey. You can't. Sometimes you need resources, and that is okay. That is absolutely okay. Right, let me just breathe into this a moment because bring my nervous system back down or back up or wherever it is. So my conductor's question to you is, if you could sit beside the version of yourself who first discovered your modalities now as life coaching, and you sat next to the Sharon that first walked into college as a psychology student, knowing what you know now, what would you sit next to her and say that the future of therapy held? Sorry, told you the conductor's questions is always a big
Oh,
one.
that's a big one. That is a big one. Okay, I'm thinking back to me when I started on my journey, my psychology journey, and I think I would definitely say be open to changes within yourself and the fact that you will evolve with the practice. Because my goodness, if you go into anything like therapy like a business and only a business, then you're not gonna survive. So be open to your own discoveries along the way, not to be afraid to kind of adapt to what suits you as well, not from a narcissistic point of view,
Yeah.
but I think from your own passion, from your own sense of purpose, because that's when you keep that energy and that passion alive. And when you keep the energy and passion alive, that's when you're going to be able to help people. So
Oh, I love that.
that's what I'd say
Oh,
to her. Allow
amazing.
yourself to
You've
evolve.
all you've also given me another thought question, and that is how, obviously conductor's question is meant to be last, but that's irrelevant. It's popped into my brain. with regards to the fact that you do so many different modalities, how do you keep yourself grounded and not absorb other people's issues? I know that's a big thing. And that's also coming from a selfish perspective because I'm obviously training to be mental health coach. So I'm like, how do you kind of dissociate it, dissociate from other people's feelings? Because obviously
Yeah.
you're a lovely person and that's why you're in this. But at the same time, you've also got boundary.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear a lot, absolutely. So you do absolutely have to protect yourself. And we've got all sorts of lovely imagery about protecting yourself. A wonderful woman, Fiona Biddle, who I knew right from the beginning of my therapy, and I still know her. She's still my supervisor, actually. Um,
Amazing.
she taught me a bubble. And Fiona's bubble is about protecting yourself, about thinking, right, okay, where am I today? And where am I going into the therapy room? So does my bubble today need to be pink because I need to calm down a bit? I need to be a bit more focused because I'm a bit all over the place. Or does it need to be a protective bubble? So, I mean, I'm mentioning colors, but these are my colors that have associated every one
Yeah,
of them with me.
exactly.
But it's also to have a you outside of your therapy. Um, and that is so important. I absolutely love music concerts. In fact, one of my clients the other day, because I'm going to a Mitski concert, she asked me for the ticket when I get it, and I'm like, I'm not sure about whether that's crossing boundaries. I haven't answered that question yet. I used to scuba dive, and I still would if it wasn't for the early mornings and the cold water in the UK. But I might
Yeah,
take that up. I learn Arabic.
that's amazing and so far away from what I would have ever said. But
So
that is taking like, that takes so much concentration and it's so away from everything that you're doing. That's a really positive and I don't know what the word is. It's like acknowledging that it's so separate from everything.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a slight kind of work link that I'm hoping I will be able to work. We've got a big therapy charity in the UK. Actually, I don't think it's just UK based that works with Palestinian children and adults in the war zone in Palestine at the moment. So I'm hoping to be able to do some charity work in the future with regards to that. But my Arabic will need
Wow.
to be a lot better because at the
Well,
moment
that is amazing as well.
I can say things like "you are a weird engineer." So I think
Oh my gosh.
or you are a hungry woman and things like that. So it's going to have to be a lot better.
But well, that is still brilliant. Okay, well, I think, like I said, the conductor's question is usually the last one, but I think that question needed to be said because you do a lot of work with people and you are amazing. And I am so grateful for you. And I'm grateful for everything that you've brought today. That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And where can
Thank you.
people find you, please?
Sure. So our website is mustardtherapy, all one word, .co.uk. You can email me at sharon@mustardtherapy.co.uk. You can also find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Again, just look for Mustard Therapy and Coaching and you will get there.
Yeah. If with me, if you would like to subscribe, if you're listening to this on YouTube, follow on Spotify and podcasts. And you can find me at Riding the Trauma Train on most platforms. If there has been anything that has triggered you today, then please go to my website, ridingthetraumatrain.co.uk, and there are many, many resources. So, again, Sharon, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. And thank you for you as well, not just for today, but
Thank you.
doing what you do, getting the word about trauma out there and the understanding more importantly is brilliant.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Riding the Trauma Train. I'm Lydia and I feel privileged to share this space with you. No matter where you are on this train right now, whether it's in survival mode, slowly finding your feet in recovery, or maybe it's somewhere in between, remember you are not alone in what you're feeling and you do not have to travel this journey by yourself. So if you'd like to continue traveling together, please follow Riding the Trauma Train wherever you're listening so you can join us at the next stop. Until next time, take care.